The sunlight spilling through the glass walls of the 23rd floor looked beautiful that morning, but I remember thinking that light could be cruel too. Because sometimes light reveals things you spend months trying to hide. Sometimes it exposes feelings you buried under deadlines, coffee cups, and fake smiles. Sometimes it forces you to see a truth standing right in front of you. The truth standing in front of me that day wore a charcoal gray suit, carried a tablet in one hand, and had eyes that looked tired from carrying too many invisible storms. And before that day ended, I would say something so reckless, so impossible, that it would change both our lives forever. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves second chances and that sometimes broken people find healing in unexpected places, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Dad Chronicles. Tell us where you're watching from and whether you've ever met someone who changed your life when you needed it most. People who looked at Kael Mercer from outside the company saw power. They saw confidence. They saw a woman who built one of the fastest growing marketing firms in the city before turning 40. Employees whispered about her discipline. Investors admired her intelligence. Industry magazines called her unstoppable. But people often confuse strength with happiness. They think people standing at the top of mountains are closer to heaven. They forget mountains can be lonely places. My name was Rowan and Kael, and I had worked at Mercer Dynamics for 14 months. I wasn't important. I wasn't extraordinary. I was just another employee trying to survive life after it had fallen apart. 2 years earlier, my father passed away unexpectedly. 6 months after that, my engagement collapsed because grief had transformed me into someone my fiancé no longer recognized. I carried debt, regrets, and exhaustion everywhere I went. Some mornings I sat in my car before work and wondered how someone could feel surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. Then Kael started noticing small things. Not grand things. Small things. She noticed I skipped lunch. She noticed I stayed late. She noticed I always took phone calls outside. She noticed my shoes were wearing out. One afternoon she quietly left a meal on my desk with no note attached. Another time she assigned me to projects that earned performance bonuses when she could have easily chosen someone else. She never mentioned any of it. She never wanted credit. That's how kindness works sometimes. It enters quietly. Months passed, and somehow the office became easier to breathe in. My days became lighter. I started laughing again. I started sleeping again. I started remembering who I used to be before sadness moved into my chest and made itself comfortable. But there was a problem. Feelings don't ask permission. They don't care about age differences. They don't care about titles. They don't care about logic. And I started falling for my CEO. I hated myself for it. Every morning I told myself to stop. Every evening I reminded myself how ridiculous it was. But feelings are stubborn things. One Friday morning, the city looked washed in golden sunlight. People moved below like tiny pieces of some giant machine. Inside the office everyone was preparing for an investor presentation that had everyone stressed. Kael looked exhausted. I noticed it immediately. Her makeup couldn't hide it. Her smile couldn't hide it. Her eyes looked heavy. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked like someone carrying too much weight. Hours later I found her standing alone on the rooftop terrace during lunch break. The sky was bright blue. Warm wind moved through her hair. She stared silently at distant buildings. Something felt different. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then she asked me whether I ever felt tired of pretending everything was okay. Not work tired. Life tired. The question felt too personal. Too honest. I looked at her and suddenly realized I wasn't looking at a CEO. I was looking at a human being standing alone. I told her everyone gets lonely. Even people everyone admires. Especially them. And for the first time, Kael looked at me with eyes that seemed vulnerable. She told me success had cost her things she never got back. She told me she hadn't celebrated her birthday in years. She told me people always wanted something from her. Money. Status. Opportunity. Nobody wanted her. They wanted access to her life. I remember the silence afterward. The city noises below. The warm sunlight touching the rooftop floor. And maybe it was the loneliness in her eyes. Maybe it was months of hidden feelings. Maybe it was seeing someone strong finally allow themselves to be weak. But I said the stupidest thing of my life. I looked at her and smiled softly. I told her that if we were the same age, I'd steal her tonight. The words escaped before I could stop them. The moment they left my mouth, I wanted to disappear. My heart stopped. My brain screamed. What had I done? I stared at the city because I couldn't look at her. Seconds felt like years. Then I heard something unexpected. A laugh. Not a polite laugh. Not a fake one. A real laugh. The kind people make when they forget to protect themselves. When I finally looked at her, tears had formed in the corners of her eyes from laughing. But then her expression softened. And suddenly she looked sad. Very sad. She looked at me with eyes carrying years of loneliness and quietly told me to pretend she was mine. Everything inside me froze. The wind felt colder. The city sounds disappeared. For one impossible moment, time stopped moving. She stepped beside me and looked out toward the skyline. She said, just for today. Just until sunset. Pretend. And maybe it sounds strange. Maybe it sounds unrealistic. But some people become so starved for warmth that even borrowed happiness feels precious. So we walked. Not as CEO and employee. Not as powerful woman and struggling man. Just two tired people borrowing a normal day. We left the office after meetings ended and walked through streets full of afternoon sunlight. We bought coffee from a tiny shop beside the park. We watched children feeding birds. We laughed about embarrassing childhood memories. I saw a version of Kael nobody else knew existed. She loved old bookstores. She hated olives. She cried during animated movies. She secretly wanted a dog but traveled too much. She once dreamed of becoming a painter before life redirected her somewhere else. Hours passed like minutes. For the first time in years, Kael looked free. For the first time in years, I felt alive. But reality always waits patiently. As evening approached, we sat on a bench facing the river. The sky turned orange. Sunlight reflected across the water. And Kael became quiet again. She said people like us don't get stories like this. I asked what she meant. She looked down. She told me she had recently received medical results. Serious results. Results she hadn't told anyone about. Suddenly I understood the sadness hiding behind her smiles. Suddenly I understood the exhaustion. Suddenly I understood everything. She wasn't carrying work stress. She was carrying fear. Real fear. The kind people hide because saying it out loud makes it real. My chest tightened. And sitting there beside her, I realized something painful. Life had given me someone I cared about deeply. But it had also reminded me that time makes no promises. We sat there quietly as daylight slowly disappeared. Neither of us moved. Neither of us wanted the moment to end. Because both of us knew pretending was becoming dangerous. Pretending was becoming real. Months later things would change in ways neither of us expected. But that evening, sitting beneath a sky painted orange and gold, I learned something my father once tried to teach me. People don't remember how expensive your watch was. People don't remember your job title. People don't remember your bank account. People remember who sat beside them when life became heavy. People remember kindness. People remember love. And maybe some of the most beautiful relationships begin when two lonely souls stop pretending they're okay. Special request before we end, comment below with the words, "Kind hearts still exist," if you believe one moment of kindness can change an entire life. And if this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, and share this video with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the Dad Chronicles because somewhere out there, someone may be waiting for a second chance they never thought would come. Because sometimes the people we want to save end up saving us instead.